And in the left corner, the booty-shaking bouncer, it's Krim!
Hi there, my name is Danny Garfield, and I'm the lead developer for The Choreographist. I wanted to just make a quick how-to-play video describing how combat works in The Choreographist and what are some cool strategies you can employ. So I guess I should start with, what is The Choreographist? The Choreographist is a rhythm-driven fighting game that sees you play two heroes at once, Krim, kind of a brutish brawler, and her super bright and cheery-eyed partner, Gleam. One of them does a little more damage, one of them is a little bit more defensive. So the gist of the game is that, to the beat, in a choreographed dance game, like a Guitar Hero or a Dance Dance Revolution, you not only get to play the notes along with the music, but also freestyle, choose your own attacks, choose where to attack, and actually even put together abilities into combo sequences to knock down as many enemies as you can. So with most rhythm games, the objective of the player is to hit all the notes they can as accurately as they can, and certainly that applies here too. But there's a secondary goal in the Choreographist as well, which is to choose your targets smartly, choose your abilities. Some of them will pierce all the enemies in a row, giving you a multiple on your score for however many enemies you hit. Some of them will splash damage across multiple columns of enemies, giving you a multiplier for that. Most importantly, every time you kill all of the enemies on the dance floor, you'll be awarded with a really sizable floor clear bonus. And those points really add up to make a huge part of your score. So, how to play? Let's start with the basics, the offensive phase. The offensive phase is made of three different sections, but the first one is your basic offensive basic attacks. These are choreographed notes in the style that you'd see in Dance Dance Revolution, Guitar Hero. They're pre-designed by the designers of the game, and they scroll in time with the music. Every time you hit one of these notes, you're going to attack the enemies somewhat at random, whittling down their health over time and kind of lowering their overall strength so that you can take advantage of it later in your attack phase. Once you hit enough of these basic attack notes in a row, you'll see this kind of whoosh of magic whoosh across the note floor. And after that, all of the remaining attacks before this phase ends will be specialized hero attacks. Each of your two heroes, Krim and Gleam, have different special hero attacks. Krim specializes in maximizing damage, doing the most possible damage in a phase at sometimes the expense of her own health. So her thrown daggers down the high lane, mid lane, or low lane will pierce every enemy in that lane, doing full damage and actually raising your combo faster, raising your score faster for every enemy that you hit. Conversely, Gleam is meant to be a little bit less advanced for someone a little bit less comfortable with a rhythm game, and is meant to be a little bit easier to play, less reward, less risk. So Gleam has her blunderbuss. No matter where you aim with your blunderbuss, you're going to hit some enemies. If you aim high, mid, or low, the difference is whoever is in that row will take the most damage, whereas everybody next to them will take smaller shot damage. Again, in the agnostic phase, you'll probably knock down a few of your enemies, and every enemy you kill is worth score. By the end of it, though, you're hoping to clear the whole dance floor. So after you finish dealing all of your basic attacks and your hero special attacks, those kind of lane agnostic attacks, you'll be awarded with one big collapsing trigger note. What the trigger note allows you to do is select between 4 currently equipped abilities between Krim and Gleam. They have more abilities than just that. In fact, before every song, you can equip 3 abilities to Gleam and 3 abilities to Krim and bring them all. But based on the depth of your combo and how you're doing, you'll be awarded 4 choices. Those attacks might pop enemies up into the air and shovel them into other rows. They might do splash damage to everyone in the nearest column. They might pull them really close to you or push them further away, or line them up for into various columns or rows. The gist of it is, you're going to want to use your first ability to set up the playfield, your second one to do some damage, and your third one to kind of pull the trigger on everything you've done, either exploding fire down the column that you've lined up, or pulling all the daggers that you've thrown back to you in one giant piercing cascade of damage across all the enemies. So once you've finished your offensive phase by completing 3 cycles of combo, opener, extender, finisher, the defensive phase starts. This is the enemy's turn to attack you back. We've been calling it in development lead and follow. So every enemy in the game has one or more different types of attacks they can do to you. Fireballs might shoot mages straight down the road. They're a good example of an early game enemy. Ghosts might charge at you, freeze, and then release quickly through the end for a slightly more difficult attack vector. Some enemies might wave through the air, and some might really quickly teleport in after a warning from a different angle. So with the offensive system, enemies are unique in the way that you're going to need to dodge their shield or break it down or take advantage of their weaknesses. On the defensive phase, it's all about protecting yourself. So let's talk about a couple advanced maneuvers. I mentioned that on the trigger notes, you could cast 4 different abilities. 3 of them, the North, West, and South abilities, will belong to your currently active hero. But that East ability will always belong to the benched hero, and there's 2 ways to cast it. By pushing the right arrow, you'll be able to do what we call a bench cast. Your benched hero will jump in, cast their ability at full potency, and when it's over, they'll jump back to the bench, leaving your currently active hero still active. If, conversely, you want to use the trigger note as an opportunity to switch heroes, you can do that as well by pushing R1 instead. The hero on the bench will leap out, they'll cast their ability, and your active hero will jump back to the bench, leaving the swapped-in hero now controlling the dance floor. And so, somebody who's playing just the musical end of the game really well will excel. You're not going to die, nothing hurts you if you're not missing notes. Conversely, somebody who's playing perhaps on the easy difficulty, but really killing their strategy, lining up enemies and knocking them down, they can both get somewhat similar scores. It's somebody who masters both sides of that equation who's going to top the leaderboards. And so, floor clears are kind of this puzzle-ish element in our brawler that's constantly part of our game loop. You go into the offensive phase and you start thinking about how to get that perfect floor clear and get it as quick as you can to get back to the next offensive phase and keep going. What's really cool too is that this floor clear system, as a part of our musical gameplay, allows us to create bespoke enemy behaviors that kind of make things more interesting and complicated. So we can have, for example, enemies that blow up if you don't destroy them before the turn runs out. We can have enemies that when you kill them, split like goos into smaller enemies to kind of reward you for spreading things out better so you can clear these tiny enemies faster. You may have noticed while I'm playing that I'm filling up a meter in the bottom left corner. We call that the ultimate meter. As I hit notes successfully for any given phase, in the offensive phase I get 3 chances because there's 3 offensive segments. In the defensive phase I get 1 chance because it's 1 big defensive phase. I'm earning these pink orbs that we call EX orbs. There's a lot of different things that you can do with them, some of them in real time, and some of them by saving them for bigger, more strategic moments. We'll start with the defensive counter. When I'm playing defense, if I'm playing really well, hitting note after note after note successfully, I build that meter to full. Now if I want, I can do nothing with that, save it for later and do something bigger with it. But most players will probably choose to hit L1 immediately and use that defensive counter. What that does, it says, enemies are done, thanks for playing, boom, every note in the air is shattered for full points and full score multiplier, give me my turn. And so the better you play, the less time you have to spend on your back foot in the defensive mode before you just leap back into offense by doing your defensive counter. In the offensive phase, there's a few different things you can do with your EX orbs. As you build your first, second, and third orb, you'll see lightning start to crackle on your trigger node. By holding that same L1 button before you pick your ability, so hitting L1 and triangle, you'll be able to cast an EX version of your ability. So for example, Roar, the ability that pops everyone up in the air, will do a ton more damage. For example, Ball Lightning, the one that rolls down a row and pops every enemy out of that row into a different row, it'll guarantee that it always hits the least populated row and throws them into the most populated row to help you group up enemies. Recall will do more damage the more enemies you hit in that row. EX is something that you want to spend wisely because it costs 2 orbs to EX, but it should be part of most of your combos if you're really trying to get floor clears. The other things that you can do when you save your ultimate orbs is, first of all, swap whenever you want. We talked about swapping on a trigger node. That's free. You can bench cast, you can swap cast, and both of those, well, swap casting pulls in your benched hero. But if you'd like, this solo is way too hard, here comes a crazy guitar solo and I can't handle it, I need a break, you can use your hard swap by pressing R1 at any time that isn't a trigger node to kind of get out of jail free. Every node on screen will burst, you'll get full points for them, your multiplier won't build, and you get kind of a moment to breathe while your next hero jumps in. So, if Crim's HP is getting really low, you're starting to get nervous, and here comes the hard part, R1, hard swap. Gleam is in, Crim is on the bench, it's time to rest. Let's keep going. The other big thing you can do with your stocked EX orbs is you can cast each hero's ultimate. Crim's ultimate is called the Drop. It's a giant sword slam on one enemy that does spike damage to one enemy and splash damage to everyone else. It's really good for multi-target bosses or just when you barely almost didn't get that floor clear. Conversely, Gleam's ultimate is a defensive ultimate. It's called Inimitable Cuteness, and she charms all the enemies on the dance floor, immediately starting a defensive phase. Instead of throwing fireballs, spears, and skulls at Crim and Gleam, for the next phase, everyone's going to throw raspberry jam hearts and gifts. Every note that you block will carry both your active and your benched hero, even if your benched hero is knocked out. The last advanced maneuver that it's probably worth talking about when you're building your combo is Orb Stuffing. This is an ability that's unlocked later in the game, and it kind of opens a lot more doors to dynamic combos. What it is on your first trigger note of any given offensive phase, you'll see this icon floating to the top right of the trigger. It represents that at any point while that trigger note is showing, it doesn't have to be on the beat, you can hit R2. That trigger note will collapse, turn into an extra EX orb, and whoosh over to your ultimate meter. You do lose the opportunity to cast an ability as a part of that attack segment, but what you gain in return is the ability to EX burn an opener, something that you ordinarily can't do because EX burning costs 2 orbs, and openers have to start the combo. EX versions of openers tend to be a lot stronger and also do interesting, more dynamic things. The other thing Orb Stuffing lets you do is EX burn twice in a combo, which ordinarily 3 segments EX burning costs 2, you would not be able to afford to do. So if you're looking to do something like EX burn your extender into an EX burn finisher, there's some really cool strategies that open up once Orb Stuffing is unlocked later in the game. So with all the strategic gameplay that these combos and ability system open us up to, we kind of discovered one really fun aspect of the game, which is our ability to build puzzle-like challenges in a dedicated side quest challenge mode. Given a certain number of enemies on the field, given a certain number of moves and no more allowed, and not constrained by time with all the time in the world to think, can you clear the dance floor? Using this challenge mode, it's a way that we can unlock ability upgrades, EX burns, passives that allow us to do extra damage or extra defense or note forgiveness. All of the upgrades in the game are driven through achievements, either in song or in challenge mode. It's where you unlock your new abilities, it's where you unlock your EX burns, your orb stuffing, it's where you unlock equipables that allow you to make the song easier or harder for more gains, or just more strategic elements.